Penguin Random House Audio presents The Ambition Trap: How to Stop Chasing and Start Living by Amina AlTai. Foreword by Rachel Rogers. This is the author, Amina AlTai. With a note written and read by Maria Shriver.
Dear You, years ago, these words attributed to Rumi found a place in my heart. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Ever since I read that, I've cultivated an image of what I call the open field, a place out beyond fear and shame, beyond judgment, loneliness, and expectation. A place that hosts the reunion of all creation. It's the hope of my soul to find my way there. And whenever I hear an insight or a practice that helps me on the path, I love nothing more than to share it with others. That's why I've created the open field. My hope is to publish books that honor the most unifying truth in human life. We are all seeking the same things. We are all seeking dignity. We are all seeking joy. We are all seeking love and acceptance, seeking to be seen, to be safe. And there's no competition for these things that we seek because they are not material goods. They are spiritual gifts. We can all give each other these gifts if we share what we know, what has lifted us up and moved us forward. That is our duty to one another, to help each other toward acceptance, towards peace, towards happiness. And my promise to you is that the books published under this imprint will be maps to the open field, written by guides who know the path and want to share it. Each title will offer insights, inspiration, and guidance for moving beyond the fears, judgments, and the masks we all wear. And when we take off those masks, guess what? We will see that we are the opposite of what we thought. We are each other. We are all on our way to the open field. We are all helping one another along the path. I'll meet you there. With love, Maria Shriver.
This book is dedicated to anyone who has lived at the margins, who knows the unspeakable pain of being told we are too something, too weird, too dark, too queer, too foreign, too big, too poor, too feminine, or too disabled to sit at the table. For the ones who have been told we are not enough because we don't conform to the narrow confines of what this world calls typical. For the ones who have spent their lives trying to change themselves when all along it was the system that needed changing. Let this book be your reminder. Everything is right with us, and it would be the deepest honor if you would sit with me just as you are. I want to unfold. Let no place in me hold itself closed, for where I am closed, I am false. Rainer Maria Rilke, Book of Hours, Love Poems to God. Author's Note. I want to address a few things before we begin. First, it's of the utmost importance to revere and respect the lineage from which knowledge emerges. I honor and pay homage to the teachers and teachings that have informed and inspired my work. My teachers, coaches, mentors, and influences include Ra Goddess, J. Love Calderon, Hildy Dunn, Erin Foley, Jesse Johnson Chandra, Srikala Chandra, Handel Group, Institute of Integrative Nutrition, Dr. Deganeet Noor, Anurag Gupta, Heather Box, Dr. Margarita Russolello, Shamanic Reiki Worldwide, Eileen Lawler, Amy Bonaducci Gardner, Charlie Knowles, Rachel Rogers, and Ben Tershin. On general terminologies. Throughout the book, I reference historically excluded and under-recognized leaders, marginalized groups, BIPOC, and white supremacy culture. To support our shared understanding, I've defined those terms herein. The vocabulary I use around any data points refers to the language I encountered during my data collection that was used by my sources. There may be instances where I use gender binary language, as that is the language in which the data appeared. Language and vocabulary are shifting quickly, and I try to always take cues from communities that are driving the change. However, I'm still using whatever language appeared in data collection to make sure the data reflects its original intentions and is therefore clear to the reader. It does not always reflect my preferences in how to address my communities. Historically excluded. When I refer to historically excluded people, I refer to those who have been denied access to equal opportunities or suffered institutional discrimination. This definition includes women, birthing parents, women of color, BIPOC, those with disabilities both visible and invisible, the chronically ill, neurodivergent people, those of varied body shapes and sizes, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Though none of these groups are monoliths and each experiences varying levels of discrimination, we know they face more challenges than cisgendered heterosexual white men. I may also refer to these historically excluded people as under-recognized leaders. Marginalized. Marginalized people are those who experience discrimination and exclusion due to imbalanced power dynamics. Marginalization can occur across races, genders, ethnicities, abilities, ages, body shapes or sizes, religions, documentation statuses, and sexual orientations. By definition, diverse, BIPOC, and historically excluded leaders are often marginalized. BIPOC. The term BIPOC means Black, Indigenous, and people of color. You may see a variation of this in the text, such as QT BIPOC, which stands for queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. This term is currently being debated within these communities. Although the term exists to express unity and solidarity, the group it represents could not be more different. Additionally, some scholars argue that the more we introduce new language in reference to non-white groups, the more we actually center whiteness in America. I made this style choice because it's a readily understood term. This term is currently being debated within those communities. Although the term exists to express unity and solidarity, the groups it represents could not be more different. Additionally, some scholars argue that the more we introduce new labels in reference to non-white groups, the more we actually center whiteness in America. I made this style choice because it's a readily understood term. White supremacy culture. White supremacy culture is defined as a form of racism that perpetuates the idea that white people are superior to people of other races, and therefore should dominate them economically, politically, and socially. Attributes of white supremacy culture appear within organizational culture and are accepted as norms and standards, without deliberate acknowledgement or consensus from the entire group. These attributes have a detrimental impact on both individuals of color and white individuals because they prioritize the values, preferences, and experiences of a single racial group over all others. Even organizations led by individuals of color, or predominantly composed of people of color, can exhibit these characteristics associated with white supremacy culture. It's important to note that we are all navigating this culture, regardless of our racial identity or intersectionality. However, we're not all affected in the same ways. There can be a tendency to hear the phrase white supremacy culture as a personal attack on white people. It is not. It's a culture we are all harmed by. A simple example of this is living in a culture that teaches us to disconnect from our physical selves and prioritize thinking above feeling, and therefore not acknowledge the valuable wisdom our bodies provide. On case studies. Finally, to preserve the anonymity of my clients, the case studies used in this book are a mix of actual and fictitious events. In some cases, it felt important to preserve the real aspects of people's stories to bring the work to life in a more tangible way. In these instances, we asked permission to include their stories. To protect the privacy of certain individuals, their names and identifying details have been changed.
Forward by Rachel Rogers. Read for you by Imani Jade Powers. I can't work today, was all I could say.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?